Hello guys, welcome to another episode of this particular video. By name, I am Japhet Okaka Ebosetale, and today under law of contracts we are going to be discussing invitation to treat under law of contracts, and we'll be differentiating invitation to treat from an offer. So generally we are going to be looking at the difference between invitation to treat and an offer, and we'll also be looking at what constitutes an invitation to treat. So let's get started. What is the meaning of invitation to treat? So from the word invitation to treat, it simply means you are being invited to treat. You are being invited to make an offer. That is why it is referred to as invitation to treat. They are inviting you to make an offer. They are not making an offer to you, but they are inviting you to make an offer. So let's look at the definition given by Bowe Eje in the case of Kali versus Carbolic Smoke Ball. Now, in the case of Kali versus Carbolic Smoke Ball, Bowe Eje in his words stated that it is not like cases in which you offer to negotiate or you issue advertisement that you have got some stocks of books to sell or house to rent, in which case there is no offer to be bound by any contract. Such advertisements are offers to negotiate, offers to receive offers, offers to chaffer. Now, if you look at this definition, you will see that invitation to treat does not necessarily lead to acceptance. The acceptance of an invitation to treat does not lead to a contract. So from an invitation to treat, it moves to an offer. Then after an offer, if accepted, it becomes a contract. So invitation to treat is just a preliminary move in negotiation. Invitation to treat is just a preliminary move in negotiation. The acceptance of an invitation to treat does not lead to a contract. So if you remember the definition of an offer, you will remember that it is stated that an offer is definite. An offer, the acceptance of an offer leads to a contract, but that is not for invitation to treat. The acceptance of an invitation to treat leads to an offer. The acceptance of an offer leads to a contract. So invitation to treat is just a preliminary move in negotiation. You are not necessarily making an offer, but you are just inviting somebody else to make an offer. So for better understanding of what is invitation to treat, it was divided into several perspectives. Number one is we have auction, display of goods, sale of land, buses and trays, and so on. So first of all, we'll be looking at auction in order to better understand invitation to treat. So we'll be looking at auction. Number one, auction. So for auction, you will see that it is now settled law that an auctioneer request for bids does not amount to an offer, but an invitation to treat. The bid itself constitutes the offer. So if you look at this, what this means is that if I'm auctioning this marker, I'm like, okay, hello everyone, come and buy my marker, come and make bid for my marker. Me inviting people to come and make an offer for this marker is not an offer, it is invitation to treat. However, the people that comes to the event and they are like, Japhet, I want to buy your marker for 15 naira. Mr. B says, Japhet, I want to buy your marker for 100 naira. Those are the offer. But me simply inviting them to come and make bid, to come and make offers, is referred to as invitation to treat. I'm inviting them to come and make an offer. That is why it is referred to as invitation to treat and not an offer. They are the ones to make the offer. That is why you'll be like, Japheth, I want to buy your marker for 100 naira. So those are the offers. Japheth, I want to buy your marker for 300. So those are the offers. Now, for auction, if I'm to accept a particular bid, I do that by dropping the hammer. That is how the auctioneer accepts a bid. This you can see in the locus classicus case of Payne versus Cave. So in Payne versus Cave, the court held that an auctioneer indicates his acceptance by the fall of the hammer. So if an auctioneer is to accept a particular bid, he does that by falling his hammer. So that is it for auction. Now, another thing you need to note under auction is that the auctioneer is bound to sell to the highest bidder. So what this means is that if Mr. A makes an offer, makes a bid to buy my marker for 100 naira, Mr. B makes an offer to buy my marker for 200, Mr. C makes an offer to buy my marker for 500, I am bound to sell it to Mr. C because he made the highest bid. So an auctioneer is bound to sell a particular good to the highest bidder. I cannot say because Mr. A is my friend, so I'm going to sell my marker to Mr. A. No, I am bound to sell my marker to the highest bidder, to the person that proposed to buy a particular thing for the highest amount. So an auctioneer is bound to sell to the highest bidder. However, there is an exception. Now, what is the exception? The exception is when there is a reserved price. The exception is when there is a reserved price. Now, what does this reserved price mean? It means that if I want to sell this particular marker for, let me say, 1,000 naira. 1,000 naira. So 1,000 naira is my reserve price for this marker. This simply means that if Mr. A says that, Japheth, I want to buy your marker for 500, that's for Mr. A. Mr. B says, Japheth, I want to buy your marker for 600. Mr. C says, Japheth, I want to buy your marker for 700. Despite the fact Mr. C made the highest bid, I am not contracted, I am not bound to sell it to Mr. C because I made a reserve price. So a reserve price simply means that this is the limit, this is the smallest amount I can sell my marker for. So any bid, any offer that is being made lower than 1,000 naira, I am not contracted to sell to that particular person. So anybody that wants to buy this marker must make a bid higher than the amount, not lesser than 1,000 naira. So that is why a reserve price is an exception to the doctrine that says that an auctioneer is bound to sell to the highest bidder. So when a particular bidder, though he might be the highest, but it's not up to the reserve price, that auctioneer is not bound to sell to the person. Now, another thing, for this particular doctrine, you can see it in the case of Advertisement versus Kunde. Advertisement versus Kunde. You can see it in the case of Advertisement versus Kunde. And also, for this reserve price, the court held that it must be communicated to the bidders. So if you want your reserve price to be enforceable, to be lawful, if I want this reserve price to be binding, to be enforceable in law, it must be communicated to the bidders. They must be aware that, Japheth have a reserve price of 1,000 naira. So that was what the court also held in the case of Advertisement versus Kunde, due to the fact that the reserve price was not communicated to the bidders. The court held that it was not enforceable. Now, under auction, you will also note that it is a well-settled principle of law that an advertisement that specific goods will be sold by auction on a certain day and time does not constitute a definite and final promise that that sale will take place. What does this mean? This means that if I, Japhet Okaka, says that I'm going to be auctioning my marker in Abuja, I'm going to be auctioning this marker in Abuja, advertise it on television, and Mr. A sees this advertisement, Japhet is going to be auctioning this marker in Abuja. So Mr. A travels all the way from Payne to Abuja, and on getting to Abuja, he was told that it has been cancelled. Japhet is no longer going to auction this marker. This doctrine is saying that Mr. A cannot institute an action against me. It was just a mere invitation to treat and not an offer. So me stating that I'm going to sell a particular thing on a so date, advertise it on TV, on radio, or anywhere, it's you cannot institute an action against me if that occasion is cancelled. So you can see this in the case of Harris versus Nicholson. In the case of Harris versus Nicholson, the plaintiff failed to recover damages for loss suffered in travelling to an advertised place of an auction sale which was ultimately cancelled. So in the case of Harris versus Nicholson, the plaintiff, he failed to recover damages after travelling to an advertised place where he was told that there is going to be an auction. So you cannot institute an action for damages against a particular person due to the fact he cancelled an event or a place where he stated that he is going to hold an auction. So that is also another doctrine under auction. So you must note that. Another thing you should note under auction is what is referred to as referential bid. Referential bid. Now, what is referential bid? Referential bid is unlawful, is unenforceable. But what does referential bid mean? So referential bid means that, let me give an example. If I'm about to auction this marker, I want to auction this marker, and Mr. A makes a bid. Mr. A, he makes a bid of 2,000 naira. That's for Mr. A. Mr. A makes a bid of 2,000 naira. He wants to buy this marker for 2,000 naira. And after making this particular bid of 2,000 naira, Mr. A also stated that let there be an additional 500 naira. Let there be an additional 500 naira in case anybody makes a bid that is higher than this 2,000 naira. That is what the referential bid means. So that in case Mr. B wants to buy my marker for 2,200 naira, Mr. A will say that I'm the one that makes the highest bid. So I don't know whether you understand what is referred to as referential bid. So referential bid in the sense means that a party will state that I want to buy so thing for 2,000 naira. However, if any other person, just like what Mr. B did, makes a bid higher than this 2,000 naira, let there be an additional 500 naira added to this one in case anybody makes a higher bid higher than this 2,000 naira. So the law is stating that it is unenforceable and it is unlawful. So that is it for referential bid. So under auction, you must note that an auctioneer request for bid does not amount to an offer. So if I'm inviting Mr. A and Mr. B to come and make a bid for my marker, it is not an offer. It is just a mere invitation to treat. And Mr. A and Mr. B, the bid that is being made by Mr. A and Mr. B are what we refer to as offer. I'm making an invitation to treat. They are the ones making the offer. And if I'm to accept it, I do that by falling the hammer. And also, if they are to travel, if these two parties are to travel to an advertised location where I stated that there's going to be auction, if they travel there and I decide not to auction this particular marker, they cannot enforce it. So under auction, referential bid is unenforceable. Reserve price must be communicated to the bidders. So that is it for auction. Now we will now move forward to the next perspective, which is display of goods. So we are now going to be looking at display of goods. So what is stated for display of goods? Now it is deeply settled by the courts that the display of goods in shop window, supermarket, stores, etc., with or without price tag does not constitute an offer but an invitation to treat. What does this mean? This means that if I own a particular shop and I have so goods and I put ample in one particular segment and I wrote ample, I put ample here, and on top of the ample I put 500 naira for one ample. Now I'm not the one making an offer. So the display of goods in shop with or without price does not constitute an offer but an invitation to treat. So it is the customer that picks the ample and put it on the desk of the cashier that is making the offer, while me, the shop owner, putting the ample outside with or without price tag does not constitute an offer. I'm only inviting customers to come and buy my ample. I'm not offering my ample to customers. I'm inviting them to come and make an offer by buying my ample, and I'm not offering my ample to them. I'm only inviting them. So it is referred to as invitation to treat, and it can be with or without price. For better clarification, let's look at the locus classicus case of Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain versus Boots Cash Chemist. Now, I'll read the facts of the case. B Company, this is the summary. B Company operated a self-service shop in which drugs were specified under the Pharmacy and Poison Act, were displayed with prices attached. The Peace Society contended that the sale of drugs took place when the customers took the goods from the shelf and put them in the basket. So the Peace Society, in this particular case, they were contending that the sale of the drug took place when the customer picks this particular picks the drug from the shelf and put it inside the basket. So that is what the Peace Society were contending. So why and accordingly the sale took place, otherwise in accordance with the Pharmacy and Poison Act. It was heard that the display of goods in shelf were mere invitation to treat and not an offer. An offer was made by the customer when he presented the goods at the cash desk. So what this court is stating in this particular case, that the display of goods on shelf with or without price tag does not constitute an offer. It is just a mere invitation to treat. So why an offer is when a customer, Mr. A, picks this ample and put it on the cashier desk. So Mr. A, customer, picking the ample with a price tag and putting it on the cashier desk constitutes an offer, while the cashier is the one to accept such offer. So me displaying ample with or without price tag, or you owning a particular store and displaying a goods with or without price tag constitute invitation to treat and not an offer. Now, another example, let's look at the case of Fisher versus Bear. So in Fisher versus Bear, the respondent displayed on his shop window a knife with price tag behind it. He was charged with the offense of offering for sale a knife, contrary to section 1, subsection 1 of the Restriction of Offensive Weapon Act. The court held unanimously that the display of knife was mere invitation to treat. So in Fisher versus Bear, a particular person was charged for offering for sale a knife. In this particular country, a knife was stated to be an offensive weapon which you are not to offer for sale to any person. So that's what this person was charged for. He was charged for offering knife for sale. However, the court stated that the court held that it was just a mere invitation to treat, and he was not offering this particular knife for sale, despite the fact that this knife was displayed on a shop window. So for under display of goods for sale, it simply means that whenever a particular goods is displayed with or without price tag, does not constitute an offer. I am only inviting people to come and make an offer. So if you are a particular shop owner and you have goods outside with or without price tag, you are not offering it for sale. You are only inviting customers to come and make an offer. So that is it for display of goods for sale. Now let's look at advertisement of sale in newspaper. So advertisement for sale in newspaper, in a nutshell, simply means that if I want to sell this particular marker and I advertise it on newspaper that I want to sell my marker, it's not an offer. I'm not making an offer by advertising it on a newspaper. It is you who is interested in buying it that makes the offer, and me advertising it on newspaper is a mere invitation to treat. Now let's look at invitation to tender. Invitation to tender. Where tenders are requested from members of the public, such requests or invitations are mere invitations to treat and not offer. So if it's almost similar to advertisement of say newspaper. So if I'm requesting tenders, I'm saying come and make tenders, it does not constitute an offer. It is you who that tender that constitutes offer. While me, I'm simply making a mere invitation to treat. For better understanding, let's look at the case of Spencer versus Hardy. Spencer versus Hardy. Now, this is the fact of the case. The defendant issued a circular offering for sale setting stock in trade. They invited tenders. The defendant invited tenders. The plaintiff tendered, and his tender turned out to be the best. The defendant refused to sell, leading the plaintiff to sue for breach of contract. Now, what does the court say? The court held that there was no contract, as the circular was a mere attempt to ascertain whether an offer could be obtained, and not a promise to sell to the highest tender. So it simply means that if I, Japhet Okaka, is inviting tenders, is inviting people to come and tender, and Mr. A tendered, Mr. B tendered, and it turned out that Mr. A made the best tender, I'm not obligated to sell this particular thing to Mr. A or to accept his tender. I am not obligated. The I inviting them is simply invitation to treat, and they tendering is simply an offer, while I am either to accept it or reject it. So this is it for invitation to tender. Now let's look at sale of land. Sale of land. So for sales of land, you must note that transactions related to sale of land requiring the ironing out of certain important details between the vendor and the purchaser. Indeed, let's move forward. Thus, not until All preliminary details of negotiation have been ironed out, and an intention to buy the land is clear. There is no offer. So for sale of land, the intention to buy, the intention to sell must be clear, or else it will be regarded as a mere invitation to treat. So for better understanding, let's look at the case of having versus facile. Having versus facile. So in having versus facile, let me read the facts. The plaintiff telegraphed to the defendant. Now look at what the plaintiff telegraphed to the defendant. Let me write it. The plaintiff telegraphed to the defendant. Will you sell us bumper or pen? Communicate lowest price. That was what the plaintiff telegraphed lowest price. So the plaintiff told the defendant, will you sell us bumper or pen? Will you sell us a particular hall, a particular building? Communicate lowest price. Lowest price. That is what the plaintiff is telling the defendant. Now look at the defendant's reply. So the defendant telegraphed in reply lowest price for bumper or pen for the particular building that you want to buy is 900. Is 900. That was what the defendant stated. Now the plaintiff also telegraphed back to the defendant, we are agreeing to buy bumper or pen for 900 asked by you. Please send us your title deeds. The rest was silent. It was heard that there was no contract. The second telegraph was not an offer, but only an indication of minimum price. This is why it is stated that for negotiations for sale of land, the intention to buy or sell for negotiations of sale of land must be clear. The intention must be clear. And in this particular case of having versus facile, where the plaintiff told the defendant, will you sell us bumper or pen? That was what the plaintiff told the defendant. The defendant replies the plaintiff, bumper or pen is 900. Is 900. That was just his reply. Bumper or pen is 900. Then the plaintiff telegraphed the defendant stating, we accept. Thinking that the defendant's reply of saying that bumper or pen is 900 is an offer. So the plaintiff telegraphed to the defendant stating that we accept to buy bumper or pen for 900. Send us your title deed. And the rest was silent. The defendant never replied. So the plaintiff instituted an action against the defendant for breach of contract, and the court held that telegraph by the defendant stating that bumper or pen is 900 is not an offer. It's not an offer. It is just an indication of minimum price and not an offer. So that is it for negotiation for sale of land. So for negotiation for sale of land, the intention, that word intention, is very clear. It must be clear. The intention to buy or sell for negotiation of sale of land must be clear. So let's move forward to the question, which is, in an event involving bus, train, who makes the offer? So in answering this particular question, what you must put into consideration is the fact, the circumstances. So it's the circumstances that you must actually consider. But let me give you a particular scenario. So if Mr. A stands at a particular park and a bus moves forward, Mr. A walks into the bus. Who makes the offer in that particular scenario? This is it for this particular scenario specifically, and not all scenarios. So in this particular scenario, Mr. A is standing at a bus stop. A bus comes. at the front of Mr. A. Mr. A walks into the boss. In that scenario, who makes the offer? That's a good question. So in answering that scenario, the person that makes the offer is actually the boss. Mr. A accepts the offer. So Mr. A standing at a bus stop is actually making an invitation to treat. I am standing at a bus stop. It means I am inviting boss to come that I want to enter the bus. So it's actually inviting boss. So that is why it refers to as invitation to treat. So Mr. A standing at a particular bus stop is not an offer but an invitation to treat. So Mr. A is simply inviting boss by standing at the bus stop. So the boss moving forward and waiting in front of Mr. A is an offer, while Mr. A is accepting the offer by walking into the bus. So that is it for this particular scenario. So it depends generally on the circumstances of the case. So for buses, the person who waits at the bus stop is simply making an invitation to treat because he's inviting buses, and the bus moving forward and moving to the front of the person and say, come Benin to Lagos or wherever, is making an offer, and the person accepts the offer by walking into the bus. So that is it for buses and trains and so on. So an invitation to treat is different from an offer. That is why they use the word invitation to treat. You are invited to make an offer. If I display goods in a shop with or without prices, I'm simply inviting you to come and make an offer, and I'm not offering it to you. So this is it for invitation to treat. By name, I am Japhet Okaka Ebosetale. Thank you so much for watching, and please remember to subscribe and watch.